Welcome to What's the Story Dublin, the official Dublin City Council podcast with me, your host, Michael Ryan. This podcast deep dives into the work of all the moving parts that make up Dublin City Council. It also shares news of the Council's latest initiatives and exciting events. On today's episode, we have the head of the City Co-Ordination Office, Karl Mitchell. Karl, you're very welcome to the podcast and thanks very much for coming on this week.
Michael, thanks for having me.
Karl, you are the head of the City Co-Ordination Office. A relatively recent office. Just explain to us what it's all about. Why was it set up?
Yeah, okay. And said thanks very much for having me here this morning, Michael. The City Co-Ordination Office really came out of COVID, I suppose. If you remember those dark days, people thought they'd never come back into the city again. People thought they'd never be on public transport or go to a restaurant or a show or whatever. And we set up really City Recovery, really was the embryonic start of that, was trying to get people, promote the city centre, trying to get people to use its facilities, get out on the outdoors again, use the parks and playgrounds and whatever. So we worked with the business community, the other stakeholders in the city, just to try and promote the city. And you could see the benefit. People voted with their feet. People wanted to get back out, and we've seen probably a resurgence even in nature and the outdoor, which is great to see, and people using their city centre. And then city coordination really came about. We obviously had that difficult time in terms of the disturbances in the city centre in that November, and we didn't call the major emergency plan then in terms of it was a major incident, but we did feel that people were looking for coordination. So it wasn't that other entities or agencies were looking for anyone to take over their area of responsibility, but it was an ideal time for us to bring people together. And any crisis is also an opportunity. So the big thing then was both to coordinate our own services better when it comes to the city centre. Large, diverse workforce, very siloed at times, as major organisations can be. But the first challenge or the opportunity for us was, well, how do we get our own services working in a more collegiate way in terms of the city centre, particularly that city core, in terms of shopping, hospitality, living and working and visiting. And then the other thing was, how do we support agencies like the HSE and Garda Síochána, academia, the business community? How do we coordinate their offering and their positive offering to make sure that the citizens are all feeling that there is this state and private sector interest and commitment to the city centre?
Because I suppose, as you referenced there, I mean, the city centre in particular did get between that day you mentioned in November and then the COVID, it did take a hammering, I suppose, during that time. So, but, you know, people who are from Dublin and people who have lots of great memories of Dublin and people who, you know, live in Dublin, there's a lot of goodwill towards the city centre as well, and people want to see it back up and running and back on its feet, and for a place to be a place again that people could come and enjoy, because they've got lots of happy memories of Dublin and Dublin City in particular. Yeah,
and I suppose we suffer from what every capital city suffers from. So there's always that sort of capital city syndrome. Well, it's the capital. And with all its challenges and issues and grittiness. But there's always an affinity with your capital city as well. You're under Cleary's clock to meet someone, your cinemas, your music venues and whatever, and your sporting venues and finals in Aviva, Croke Park or whatever. So there's some of that, but I suppose the other thing is the city, we've learned since COVID as well, is one, it's a great walkable city. It's got parks, it's got streetscape, second to none in one sense. And a lot of new communities really have shown the rest of us that the city is there to be enjoyed without having to buy a ticket or join a queue. The other thing is young people have definitely voted with their feet in terms of parts of the city and have taken on parts of the city. And the challenge for us is some of it, perception of safety is reality if that's what you perceive the city to be unsafe. So that's something we have to step up to ourselves and other stakeholders. So if you feel at any age cohort the city's not for you because you're fearful on public transport or you're fearful that there will be difficulties in the city at a particular time after dark, well, one, we need to challenge the narrative, but more importantly, we need to make sure the city is available. And in one way, cities like Dublin, we're moving towards a 24-hour city in terms of the way cities all across the world work. Like, we're a small city, but we've sort of we're a small city with a big ambition. And part of the work we do now with colleagues in the City Council and others is just to not be afraid to say that the city is gritty, but also not to any way take for granted or dismiss when people are saying, well, if we can't get cleanliness and safety and vibrancy in the city back, the city won't be the same place it was years ago. And part of that work for us is, I suppose, and again, it's been regularly in discourse in the media, has been around, we need more people living in the city. Like I always say, our new tourists are not Americans or Germans, they're people from Ashbourne and from Stillorgan, they're our neighbouring counties. And you will see over the next couple of years we're working and putting a push on really to try and get people to dwell in the city, or to people, if they're coming up for a concert or coming up for a sporting event, why not take a night in the city or take a couple of nights in the city? So as I said, every crisis is an opportunity, and there's a lot of goodwill now about how do we move on in terms of improving both the image of the city, particularly that city centre piece, and that people feel that area either side of the Liffey is to be enjoyed morning, noon and night.
You touched on it there. I mean, in some ways, it as you say, if people don't feel safe, or if people feel the city isn't clean, that's their feeling, and it's hard to shift them from that. So perception is a big thing. But it's also, I suppose, important for the likes of your own office to point out that by the metrics you guys have, Dublin is a relatively clean city and safe city, right?
Yeah. So I mean,
not saying that nothing ever happens, but
no,
it is by and large a safe city.
Yeah, but by European norms, ours is it's on the upward curve by European norms, but there are parts of the city, like a lot of capital cities, there are parts of the city that people feel are not up to European norms, whether that's in a feeling unsafe, or whether it's a feeling of grime and dirt. And other things, the broken window syndrome, as you'd see. And the big push for us as well is about living over the shop, trying to work that through. And we've obviously 2 pilot streets we're working on at the moment to sort of find out what are the ways we can make these opportunities arise for particularly the private owners who own these properties, about bringing life above the shop. And then what are the challenges, whether they're local legislation level or national legislation level? So what are the barriers to making our city a livable city in the city centre? And that's not to say it is, because people often say in the media, no one lives in the city centre. But if you tell the people living in Dominic Street or St Mickens, they live in Dublin City Council's flat complex, they live in the city centre. They don't feel that they don't. So it's to try and make sure, the challenge for every city in the world, I think, is to make the city feel that is of the people who live there and have lived there for generations, but is welcoming to others. And how the big thing, I suppose, we always push is balance. We can get balance in everything we do, whether that's hospitality, whether it's use of the pedestrianised streets versus the car and public transport, whether it's people indigenous to the community and living there for decades but welcoming new people as well. If you can get balance in all of those areas, you've probably got a city that you can be proud of.
What are you mentioned a couple of streets there. What are the streets you're working on at the minute, and what exactly is happening on those streets? Yeah,
so I suppose we're looking at sort of test bed, really. We're looking at test bedding streets. So you might have seen it in dispatches. The Middle Abbey Street is one street, and the reason we picked that, I suppose, is one, it's just off O'Connell Street. 2, it has that mix of both traditional shopping offering that you would see in cities around Ireland, and then some multiples from other cities. We have a challenge that there are lots of areas above shop unit where there isn't living, where people aren't living. We have some vacancy at shop unit level. We have the Lewis cuts through the street as well. We've all those both challenges and opportunities. So we're using that one as a way, and we're doing a lot of work around digital twinning, just using technology as well, and trying to find out who works there, who lives there, what's the history of the street, and then what do we need to do. One area we're looking at is meanwhile use. Can we get activity onto the street in advance of permanent uses? And the other thing is, what way can we work with fire services, disability access, conservation and others to make sure we can get those livable, those units, look above ground floor and see that you'll see light on in the evening. And that whole idea of leave the light on, that people are living there, throwing light onto the street and activity and vibrancy. And North Frederick Street is just a different type of street. It's a historical street. And the idea there again is those buildings were at one stage stately buildings, stately homes, and then change over through hundreds of years there, change from habitable spaces, overcrowded spaces, and then in more recent times they would have been maybe office spaces around, architecture, law, whatever. But the idea for us is how do we repurpose those buildings with the private sector, again, back to the who owns the buildings. And part of the work we're looking at, well, and how do we incentivise when you get those buildings back, the idea, like as in some other European cities, that you've got workers who live very close to their place of work, whether that be in a medical setting, whether it be in policing or other public transport, retail. The ideal is that the person goes to work, she or he does a full day's work, and they're not travelling long distance to get home because they're working those shift patterns predominantly. So how do you keep them close to their place of work, that their home is close to the place of work? So these are the challenges, but I suppose we're up for them.
You've already done work on Talbot Street.
Yeah, so Talbot Street really, and we've done Talbot Street. The City Council has spent over €2 million on Talbot Street. And again, this is not the panacea to all things, but this is around the approach we're taking now is taking it street by street. So we have the development plan for the city. We've a number of policies, but for the local person, sometimes policies are not relevant to their daily lives. So somewhere like Talbot Street, which again I'd say is changing in front of our eyes in terms of the offering, particularly in food and whatever like that, and a changing street. But the street itself had become poor. So if you ask people, what do you want on the street? Simple things like enough bins, footpaths that are flat and you can push a buggy, or you can make your way down the street, some colour, some greening. So that's what we've done on Talbot Street, and we're now moving to Dame Court, Dame Lane, that area, and then we'll be moving on to Westmoreland Street, O'Connell Bridge, and then we'll be moving back across to the north side. So you'll just see this pattern over the next number of years where the City Council will invest money, which just is not a major planning application, it's not a dig of a street. This is all around making the basics on the street work better for those people who traverse it.
It's amazing actually how little changes can make a big difference. Like I remember walking down Talbot Street after you'd done the work there, and the blue lights that were sort of zigzagging across the, if I could call it the roof of the street, like above my head, between the buildings. And it really made an impression. Like it really, made the street seem vibrant. And, all that was, I know you'd done lots of other things on the street, but I remember just being struck by the lights and just thinking, wow, what a difference, something like that can make. And as you say, it's a small thing. It didn't require big, huge, legislation or anything like that.
Yeah, like you go to other Europe, again, you go to other European cities or other holiday destinations, and you often, all of us do it, and you go, well, I wonder why we don't just do that in Dublin. Why is that not happening in Dublin? And I suppose what we're doing more of, so that type of lighting, that does two things, that lighting. One, it animates in the space above your head, it's colour changes it can be for Patrick's Day, it can be for May Day or whatever, but it also gives a sense of safety. If you can see the end of a street from the top of a street, or you follow a line, it's a natural sort of progression in terms of safety. But we're doing that now on any of the streets. But the other thing we're doing, you might have seen more of recently, is just activations. So do you ever walk around a city in Europe and all of a sudden there's a cinema, there's a screen on the gable wall and there's some plastic seats and you're watching a movie? Like everyone goes on about Dublin and weather, but that's a fallacy. Dublin can do that just as easy anywhere else. So we're doing more and more where you just come across, whether it's a teddy bear's picnic, like the big one recently, and these seem simple and sort of, maybe people might say, well, that's only that, but similar things around, whether it was Mother's Day or whatever, just people in O'Connell Street getting their photograph taken. So it's Instagrammable, but it's also we were physically giving you a photo of yourself and your loved one.
Valentine's Day, I think.
Valentine's Day as well. We've done them right through the year. And those things are memories. So what makes cities? Memories. So the memory can be on your phone, but it can also be physical. So we're more and more into that idea of that when you come to Dublin, you'll enjoy the biggest selling point we have in Dublin. Maybe it's not architecture, it's maybe not grand, famous dining, even though we have a lot of that. It's really people. So our biggest asset is people, and that's what I'd say we need to sell more of. So the activations is around, like I remember one I really enjoyed recently was when we did Tradfest on O'Connell Street, and we had people from all over the world doing Irish dancing on O'Connell Street, and it was a pure
Spontaneous,
organic, spontaneous moment. It wasn't planned. You didn't know about it. You just came across it. 15 minutes, you could do a dance, even though you never thought you were going to do a dance on O'Connell Street, and you're about your business. And more, that's what we'd like to see.
Certainly, anecdotally, people that you hear that come to Dublin, like tourists that come to Dublin from all parts of the world, seem to have a great time in the city.
Yeah, we do ourselves down sometimes. I mean, all the stats say that tourists have a fantastic time in the city. And I suppose for us, we can be, but that's a bit of an Irish trait. You know what I mean? That's a bit of an Irish trait that, you know, we're worse than we think we are, you know, and it's always good to have a bit of a give out. But I do think we need to be able to make sure that we end up with a city that is as welcoming in one street as it is in any other street. So we don't end up with any differential city that has parts where, yeah, it's very welcome, there's other parts where there's not enough happening. And we're meant to be the leaders there. So we can't just expect that just to happen. So our job is to invest. Our job is to be, and again, as I said, the whole issue of perception. If people perceive it's not welcoming, if people perceive it's not a place of destination, well, it doesn't matter whether that's true. It's the perception is the truest bit of it, and our job is to respond to that. So it's not to respond to whimsical things in the media or sound bites. Listen to your people, listen to your tenants, listen to people who do business in the city, listen to people who visit. If you listen to all those, and again back to my earlier point, if you can get a balance across all those and be willing to say, yeah, we're not perfect, but be willing to say that at least we're on a journey that we know is the end game is a better city for particularly for the people who live in it.
I want to ask you about O'Connell Street, because we mentioned various streets there, and obviously O'Connell Street is the main street in our capital city in Ireland. It's had its detractors in more recent times, but I know it's a big focus for yourself and for obviously the rest of the City Coordination Office team, isn't it?
Yeah, so O'Connell Street's the prize that's to be won, really. O'Connell Street, people, again, sometimes might forget that O'Connell Street is the main street of the capital, but it's the main street of the country. So O'Connell Street is there to be, one, to support what's already there, the things that are already working well, and to support that. Two, as a street goes, it's a boulevard, but it's not seen as a boulevard. You know, it's not working properly as a boulevard. Physically, yes, but culturally, no. So we have a group of the stakeholders on and adjacent to O'Connell Street. Like, you look at that street and you think of Clery's, you think of Eason's, you think of the Gresham, you think of the Rotunda. You know, the street is alive in lots of ways. What we're going to do now, and you'll see in the next year, is join the dots. So there's a lot of development coming that way. You have a new National Theatre in the Abbey. You've got the GPO, the iconic GPO, with led by the OPW. You're going to see a major. It'll be the crown jewels of maybe that area. You're going to see the revamped Rotunda, the Ambassador coming back to life. Clery's is finishing off. There's no end of possibilities for that street. What the City Council has to do, like any municipality, is manage the actors, to manage all of those, private and public, to make sure we get a street that is fitting of its history and its future. And that's not there yet. But I think the work we're doing now is bringing the stakeholders together, talking to government, and just making sure that there are gaps in that street. We know that there are issues on that street, and our job now is we're looking at all of those in a holistic way.
You mentioned government. Where does the City Coordination Office dovetail in with the Taoiseach's Taskforce?
Yeah, so in one way, everything converged, really. We'd set up straight after, as I said, after the difficulties in the city. We set up, and we'd already started to work on a plan for the city centre. That was an immediate thing. To be fair to Chief Executive and others, that we saw it that weekend. We said we need a plan that does things rather than a plan, and spent 3 years doing a plan. Let's start doing things, which we did immediately.
Yeah.
And at the same time, obviously, pretty soon after that, the Taoiseach announced the Taskforce. So I suppose, we're the leading agent in the Taskforce. And then you also had people like the NTA and Garda Síochána and private business in Dublin town and others who all contributed. We were all basically saying the same thing. Dublin City does not need more plans. It definitely doesn't need more plans. It doesn't need more strategies for years to come. It needs to complete the ones that were already there, and it needs to be very simplistic. What do residents want? Action. When do they want it? Now, to use that old adage. So the Taskforce and ourselves dovetail well, and the City Coordination Office really, from that, we've a rejuvenation action group which brings together over 50 stakeholders in the city. So we're just at the cusp of now. We know what needs to be done. We know we need both public and private money to do it. We know we roll our sleeves up and we believe everyone else is doing the same. And I think what you'll see over the next number of years, you'll start to see in the next year, you'll see more of your Talbot streets. You'll see more concrete, visible things happening, while at the same time seeing things like the Parnell Square Cultural Quarter come to fruition. You'll hopefully see the Ambassador reopened. You'll see the GPO through its consultation phase now coming out of the ground in terms of its ambition and ideas. So I'd say I'd hope for Dubliners the next 2 or 3 years, you will get a sense of the task forces, 10 big moves. You're starting to be whittled down to 8 big moves and 5 big moves. And some of the real difficult issues will have to be tackled both at state level and at a local authority level, and they need to be tackled, but they need to be done in a way of supporting the most vulnerable in the city. They need to be done in a way that makes the city again, that Dublin stays Dublin. Dublin does not want to be Vienna, no offence to Vienna. It doesn't want to be New York. It wants to be Dublin. So how do we do all that to make sure we're still the same Dublin that you said earlier on when you were saying about the way people thought of Dublin? The big one is Dublin is town. So the city is the city, but it's town. It should stay town. We're a city of villages. We should stay that way. That's the way we started from the Viking era, and that is our unique selling point. Let's keep that unique selling point.
You mentioned other cities there in Europe. Presumably, obviously, even though notwithstanding what you said, us wanting to keep the essential character of Dublin, there are things. We don't claim to be the oracle for everything, obviously. So there are things we can learn from other cities as well. Do you find yourself when you're away on maybe holiday breaks and things like that, sort of thinking, "Oh, that could be a good one for Dublin City"? You know, you're away somewhere and you spot something.
Yeah, and to be fair, part of what cities do should be to go and look at other cities and find out what they do well. We shouldn't be afraid to steal a good idea and make it our own, pretend we thought of it first. So I think there's no harm in what our office does and other areas at City Council, particularly comparable cities. Cities of our scale and size. Cities maybe, like everyone talks about, let's say Copenhagen. Like Copenhagen in decades gone by was a car-led city. It was a difficult city to transverse. It was, look at it now, leaving out even the transport in terms of what they use to their advantage. Like we're a very lucky city, as I said. One, it's walkable. 2, it has fantastic history. 3, it has architecture that sometimes we don't properly sell ourselves. It has a river going right through the middle of it. It has a bay. Like the list goes on and on and on. So we don't need to build anything. We just need to promote what we have and make sure what we have is up to a standard that draws people back. But as I said, the most important people to us now is to get people on the 46A or whatever the bus number is now, to get them to come into Dublin, shop, socialise and go back out and still use what they have locally. But always, I keep saying, always keep in mind, I'll do this locally, but I'll go into town. I'll go into town for something that's different.
For the experience as well of it, yeah. It's kind of an intangible thing sometimes, isn't it? The experience of coming to town.
As it should be. It should be for any of us growing up, and the issue of maybe coming in at Christmas and that time.
Switcher's window and all
that. Exactly. And for young people now, leaving out even alcohol, young people get a bad name now around alcohol and other things, but young people want to congregate. If it's a sunny day, young people need to congregate. So the idea, young people who meet, they maybe meet online, they're from schools, but from different parishes and communities, for them to say, I'll meet you at the plaza on College Green. I'll meet you on the top of Henry Street. Fantastic. let it happen. More of it, please. And then we want other people to be able to say, well, the experience I want to get tonight is there's an all-male ballet performance in the Bord Gáis, which happened last week, and it's travelling the world. I want to get my friends and my partner and others to go and see this, or I want to go up to the gate and see a play, you know, and then I want to be able to get half-decent food. So the city should be for everyone. It doesn't have to be every day for everyone, but it definitely needs to be for everyone, that they say at some stage in their week, I want to go into town for something.
So success for you then in terms of the City Coordination Office would be just getting more people to come in and experience the city and enjoy the city then, presumably?
Yeah, real success would be more people living in the city.
Okay.
That'd be real success, without forgetting the people who already live in the city and making sure that their conditions are improved. Success then would be that people start to, and I said, we're not expecting everyone, you know, to have this light bulb moment to go, I'm all rushing back into town. But over a period of time, people, particularly in the hinterland, or if they're coming up from around the country to an event or whatever, feel that the city is a place that's affordable, is welcoming, is a place I don't always, you can Cork or Kerry, you don't have to say I love Dublin. I wouldn't expect that at all. That'd be like a bad GA match. But I would love to say to people, well, I when I'm in Ireland, I might say Dublin's this, but I want to be proud of Dublin when I'm away somewhere else. And I say we have a great capital city. And the final thing I'd say is, but I don't want it to become another. I want it to stay a little bit gritty and grungy. I want Dublin to stay what Dublin always was, and part of that is that otherwise we would have never had a Moore Street. We'd never have the street sellers of France Street. You know, we'd never have any of those type of things happening. So all of those things are part of who we are, our DNA, and we should never lose our DNA.
My final question, do you enjoy your job? Seems like you do. You're passionate about Dublin.
Yeah, well, I'm from Dublin, which is great. I'm from Finglas on the north side, now live in Inchicore on the south side. So I've obviously done the mortal sin of moved across the river. Yeah, I love Dublin. I've never had, I'll say this now, it'll sound a bit twee, but I've been very lucky in the job. I really enjoyed every moment of my career, and I've done most jobs twice. I think I did yours at one stage. So I've really enjoyed it. And this one is a challenge. But we should all love a good challenge, but this one has a good ending, I think, and I think I often say about the city council. People often talk about the city council, and the city council, 8 blokes on a shovel looking into a hole, and then you say to them, "What do you think of your park?" I love my park locally. Yeah. Do you ever go to a leisure centre, swim pool? Yeah, I like Mary and Johnny in the leisure centre. So the city council in some way is nebulous. The thing called the city council can be the city council, call it what you like, but the experience you get is the city council. Is that in a park? Is it in a library? Is it in a local area office? Is it something we're doing with stakeholders? So we can be both of those things. We're lucky we can be this thing that is seen as this big monster that does very little for you, but this other thing that's a touch point in everyday your life, and you don't even sometimes realise it's a touch point. And long may it continue.
Well, that's a nice note to leave it on. Karl, thank you very much for coming on the pod.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
And thanks again to today's guest, Karl Mitchell. I'd also like to extend my thanks to our audio engineer and editor, Rob Fay. This podcast was produced by Shane McIntyre and myself, Michael Ryan, and recorded in the Central Library studio. Be sure to spread the word if you're enjoying What's the Story Dublin, and like and subscribe for future episodes. Take it handy.